Hello, my name is Eric Evans, and I am proud to serve as the County Manager for Edgecombe County. I want to take a little time to walk you through our budget for fiscal year 23-24 in an effort to be more transparent, to engage our citizens in both understanding our budget and the process, but also to get your feedback. So, just a little bit about myself. I've been with the county for 21 years and I've been manager for about 7.5 years. I'm grateful to serve our 7 commissioners and grateful to serve you in this wonderful county. So, I just want to say that I won't cover the details of the budget. This is just an overview, but I want you to have some idea of how our budget shapes up and some of the major highlights about our budget for next fiscal year. So, let's get started. So I want to share with you the objectives that have helped to guide our process. First objective was to balance the budget with no tax increase. I'm sure that's important to you. It's certainly important to us. We want to make room to implement a compensation plan. I'll talk about that a little more shortly. We want to minimize a fund balance that's appropriated. If you think about it, a fund balance is sort of like a rainy day fund, if you will. It's our reserve account. So we're required to keep a certain amount of reserve. We try to keep enough to cover major things if they come up. But sometimes we have to take money out of that reserve to balance our budget. We try to do that as little as possible, but sometimes we have to do that. Also, we look to find operational efficiencies, address critical capital needs. Also, how can we better align our agency funding to our vision, mission, and priorities? We also want to follow our fiscal policies. Our board adopted a set of policies back in 2015 that talks about things like debt limits and capital improvement and fund balance targets and goals. So we want to make sure that our budget is in keeping with our fiscal policies. And finally, we want to allow our priorities to be reflected in our budget. Now I want to talk about our priorities. So the Board of Commissioners had a retreat back in March, and part of their work that day was to discuss their priorities for our organization, this county, and the budget for next year. They came up with 4 main priorities, and they included employee salaries, public safety, education and workforce, and economic development. So we hope that their priorities are adequately reflected here in this FY24 budget. Now, before we started the process, we took a step back here at the county and we really thought about where we wanted to be as an organization. We thought about where we want to be as a county. And so we did some work around crafting or recrafting our vision statement. We asked ourselves, who can we be as a county? Who can we be as an organization? And so from that process, we have developed a new vision statement that I want to share with you. So first, the vision for our county from our citizens' perspective is Edgecombe County is a historic place that values its citizens and natural resources and creates opportunities where people are proud to live, work, and play for generations to come. I don't know about you, but that's certainly a county that I love to live in. Secondly, we reflected within ourselves to see who do we want to be as an organization. So our vision for our organization is Edgecombe County values its employees so that it can be an organization committed to providing exceptional services to our citizens through an innovative, passionate, and creative team devoted to excellence, integrity, and transparency for the continued growth of our county and staff. So we have now that two-sided vision statement that reflects both towards our citizens and inside of our organization. Now, in order to move towards that vision, we need to have some fuel behind it, right? And for that, we've looked back to the legacy of our former county manager, Mr. Lorenzo Carmen. Lorenzo was the manager here before me. He was manager for 14 years and he did a great job. He retired in 2015 and unfortunately he passed away almost 2 years later. Mr. Carmen used to always say to us that I'm sick and tired of being at the top and bottom of every bad list. And to that I say amen. I totally understand the frustrations of the county for our citizens, for the struggles that we have as a county, as many counties, particularly in eastern North Carolina, face. But we have taken that sentiment from Mr. Carmen and we have fashioned it into our mission statement, a call to action, if you will. And our call to action is simply get off the list, right? So all of those bad lists that Mr. Carmen used to talk about, we're going to work very hard to get off the list. If nothing else, we at least want to move to a better place on that list. Some of those lists include high unemployment. Unfortunately, we frequently have one of the highest unemployment rates in the state of North Carolina. Also, we have poor health indicators. We are a tier 1 county, which is a way that the North Carolina Department of Commerce rates its counties based on economic viability. And 1 is not good, 1 is at the bottom. We have low educational attainment, declining population. We are one of 51 counties in North Carolina that lost population according to the 2020 census. Also, we are number 99 out of 100 counties in what's called the county health rankings. So this is really just a sampling. So that's what we mean by we want to get off those lists. So, in working on our budget with that vision and that mission, that call to action in mind, we thought, okay, how can our budget reflect that vision? So, we've worked to put together a budget that we have presented to our board, which I'm going to share some overview with you. So, just big picture, you can see here. Our budget for FY24 will be a tax rate of 95 cents per $100 in value. That's the same tax rate as it is now, so there will be no increase in our tax rate. Secondly, 1 cent generates $351,895. That's something that we have to rate and report every year. Also, our total general fund budget is a little over $72 million. Now, that is actually a decrease from the beginning budget of this current fiscal year, about a 3.2% decrease from the original budget. You heard me talk about earlier fund balance, how sometimes we have to take money out of that reserve to balance our budget. Well, we're having to do that again this year in order to not raise our taxes and to do some of the critical things that we need to do. So we're appropriating a little over $6 million from fund balance for next fiscal year. That is an increase from the current year's fund balance appropriation. So again, that's just a broad overview of our budget. Now I want to talk briefly about revenues. So we have many revenue lines, many categories of revenue lines. This graph here just shows you some of the major revenue lines that we have. Our largest source of revenue is, of course, our ad valorem taxes, property taxes that you pay on your houses, land, and cars, and other things like that. Our second largest source of revenue is sales tax. So you can see the different categories there and how much it contributes to our overall budget. Now, in working on our budget, we look at those revenue lines. One of our major ones, as I mentioned, is ad valorem tax revenue. So this graph here really sort of shows under the hood of how we work on the budget process. I won't walk through this spreadsheet here, but I just want you to see how the things we have to look at in determining what our budget should be. We look at the total value of the property, all of the property in the county. Our tax administrator, Ms. Teresa Lewis, she provides us that information that's based on the listings of properties in the county. And then we estimate what we think our collection rate will be. We have, in the last couple of years, collected about 96% of the taxes in the first year that they are due. We also have to back out of the value you see down at the bottom left, those exemptions and deferrals. For example, according to the state of North Carolina law, senior citizens and veterans can get an exemption from some of their property taxes. Regarding deferments, that's what they call PUV or present use value. Farmland that's actively being farming can get a reduction in the taxes that have to be paid. So that has to be taken off the total value that we can collect from. And so, you'll see to the far right, we use all of that information and we estimate what our ad valorem tax revenue will be for next year. Again, here is looking under the hood a little bit. This is our second largest revenue source, and that's sales tax. This is just a table here that we use to track our sales tax collection. And back, you can see back to FY-17. Sales tax is collected in different what they call articles, which is referring to the state statute that enable that sales tax to be collected. We look at how we are tracking over the year. For example, you can see this current year, we've tracked up through February because our sales tax receipts are always a couple of months behind from the state. So we track that to see where we plan to be. You can't see that bottom number just behind my head, but we are tracking to be right at about $10 million, which was where we were last year. So we use all of this information to create a budget for next year. Here's just a graph that shows sales tax collection from month to month, year to year. And then this slide here shows, again, looking at what we budgeted to receive in sales tax and what we actually received. And we use that to make some projections. So you'll see to the right and at the bottom that for next year we are budgeting to receive about $150,000 more than what we're budgeting this year in sales tax. Again, this is looking under the hood a little bit, but I just want to show you some of the process that we have to go through to make those projections. A couple of other revenue notes. We have lots of revenue lines, so again, I won't talk through all of those here, but I just wanted to show you some highlights. For example, our Sheriff Clee Atkinson, who does a great job, he runs the detention center here in the county. We have some excess space in the detention center. So with that, we're able to house federal inmates, and the federal government pays us an amount per inmate per day. And so that's a revenue that we collect. You can see what it was back in FY-21 and up to how much it is so far this fiscal year. So we're budgeting $1.3 million in that particular revenue line for next year. EMS collections. We brought in EMS or emergency medical services in January of 2021. Used to be an outside organization that ran that. We brought that in-house, and for that service, we are able to bill and collect on a number of the services that we provide there. And we bill private insurance, Medicaid, Medicare, sometimes private pay. But you can see what our revenues have looked like from FY-22, 23 so far, and what we're budgeting for next year. Then to the far right, we also look at investment income. Now, I brought this to our board's attention because usually this is a relatively small amount. And when it says investment income, really it's interest from money, county funds that are in the trust account. That's what it's called. So we park money in what's called a trust account. When we need to spend it, we bring it out of that account and put it in our operating account so we can do payroll and pay our bills and things like that. So, but it was interesting to notice, which is why I share with the board and I'm sharing with you, that we've had more money in that account than usual because of some federal grant funds that we have received over the last couple of years, for example, COVID-related funds. Also because our fund balance has increased some over the last couple of years. So that, along with the fact that interest rates have been going up, you can see that our investment, or really the interest income that we've been receiving off that account, has been increasing. So that's a revenue stream. It's certainly not our largest revenue stream, but it's one I wanted to bring to our board's attention. I want to share that with you. Now let's look on the expenditure side. So we've got lots and lots of lines on the expenditure side. First, I want to show you this graph here, and it shows you the major categories under expenditures. You'll see that the largest expenditure category is public safety. That includes the sheriff's office, detention center, E911 call center. It includes emergency medical services and a few other things, but that's the largest category of expenditures that we have. Second largest is education at 20%. Third largest would be social services and general government, just a little bit behind that. So again, just some of the major categories of expenditures for Edgecombe County. Now, uh, not only is it our greatest asset, but it's also by far our greatest cost, and that's our people. Well, it should be our greatest cost because that's how we serve our citizens is through our people. We don't, create a product, we don't make a widget, we don't manufacture anything. We provide services, and we do that through our people. And we have a great team here at Edgecombe County. Just for you to know, we have usually hover around about 550 or so full-time employees. Um, our largest department is the Department of Social Services. Second largest is Sheriff's Office, and third largest is Health Department, and EMS, Emergency Services, are sort of running neck and neck. But just a few highlights. I mentioned earlier at the beginning of the presentation that we are working on an overhaul of our compensation plan. So we have not, other than some small cost of living increases over the last several years, we have not done a pay study since I think 2009. And as you know, the world and the economy keeps moving and growing, and the cost of everything keeps going up, and competition for the workforce is getting stiffer by the day. And so it was time for us to take a look at our compensation plan. And I call it an overhaul and not just a market study, because really our compensation plan needs to be updated. It needs to be modernized and improved along with the market study. That's currently underway. We hope to have it completed before we finalize the budget in June, and we're going to share the information with the board. My job is to look at that information, determine how much it will cost, and then how much we can afford. And then I will present a recommendation to the board. So the cost of that is not currently included in the budget. That will be something that the board will make some decisions on a little bit further into the budget process. I do want to note that the board has already planned to have a work session on June the 21st at 10 a.m. The purpose of that work session will be to hear a presentation on that compensation plan so that they can finalize their decision. I can make a recommendation and they can finalize their decision. So you are welcome to join us. It will be here in the County Administration Building. It will be on the second floor in Conference Room 260. We will be publishing a notice about that in the coming days. So be on the lookout for that. You're welcome to come and hear that. Second note about personnel is that we do not have an increase in our health insurance premiums. We are what they call self-insured. That means that we pay our insurance premiums, we put that in a pot, and then as we get claims, we pay it out of that pot. We pay Cigna, our health insurance provider, they manage it for us, and we pay them an administration fee. But based on claims, we see that we don't expect to have an increase in our premium costs for next year. We offer some added benefits, and including programs called Health Map RX, which that's a chronic disease management program. We offer our staff members to participate in EAP, Employee Assistance Program. We do a wellness incentive. Employees that reach certain goals can get a $250 incentive. We will be adding what's called a medical weight management program next year, or at least that's our plan. And that's for folks who are overweight, obese, really. Unfortunately, we've got a little over 24% of our staff that are at a 40 BMI or greater. And that's not unlike what you see out in the general public, really. But this is a program that some employees who qualify can participate in, and hopefully to help them with managing their weight. We are exploring the possibility of passing some of our premium costs on to our employees. Currently, it does not cost our employees to participate in our insurance program. They have to pay for any, the children or family coverage, but for them, it's free. The county pays for it. We're exploring the possibility of passing some of those costs on to our staff members in exchange for having lower deductibles. We've heard from some of our team members that they would be interested in that. We're getting ready to do a survey to decide if we want to do that or not. That won't have an impact on our budget, but it's a note that I brought to the attention of our board. We're also using again this year a budgeting method, what's called a vacancy allowance. Oftentimes we have lapsed salary through the course of the year. We budget for every position as if it's going to be filled for the full year. But of course, not all positions are full the whole year. And so we have that lapsed salary at the end of the year. A vacancy allowance is a way of taking part of that and sort of tying it up in the budget, or making sure you set it aside in the budget that you know you're not going to use it, so that we can pay for some other things, minimize the fund balance appropriation, and put us in a position where we don't have to raise our tax rate. So again, just a few highlights on personnel. We try as best as we can not to create any positions unless we absolutely need to. Had about 15 positions that were requested from our departments, but these are the ones that I'm recommending that we add, and we are only adding these to either improve our services or to advance our mission. You'll see there, I won't spend a whole lot of time here, but you can see that we do plan to add a Parks and Recreation Director position. Our board adopted a Parks and Recreation plan a few years ago, and one of the components of that plan was to create this position so that we can grow and improve our parks and recreation opportunities in the county. Secondly, here in my office, I'm going to add what's called a Career Navigator position. And really that stems from, we talked a moment ago about getting off the list, right? We have one of the highest unemployment rates in the state. And what we find is that we have around about 1,500 Edgecombe County residents that are listed as unemployed, but yet at the same time, you'll see we'll have anywhere from 1,600 to 1,700 jobs available. So there's a disconnect there somewhere. This person, his or her job will be to go out to find folks who are unemployed, who want to work, who need to get connected with training to get the skills that they need to get good paying jobs, and make those connections to help them navigate through this system that sometimes can be complicated. Ultimately, the goal is helping to move us in the direction of lowering our unemployment rate. Other positions in other departments there, I won't go through all of those. But you'll see that there are a handful of positions that we are planning to add next year. Now, outside agencies, in order for us to reach the breadth and width of our county and to reach and touch and serve our citizens, we have to rely on some of our partner agencies to help us to do that. Now, sometimes we fund outside agencies because of statutory requirements. For example, counties are required to provide funding to the schools and to the community college. Sometimes we fund outside agencies based on agreements with other units of local government. For example, we have an agreement with Nash County and the city of Rocky Mount to help fund the library in Rocky Mount. We have an agreement with the town of Tarboro to help fund the library here in Tarboro. So sometimes, we either by statutory requirement or ongoing agreements, we provide funding to outside agencies. Beyond that, our board has the opportunity to strategically invest in agencies, nonprofits that are helping to fulfill the mission of the county and provide services to our citizens. So Overall, we received a total of requests. We allow agencies to request funding from the county. So the total of the requests we received is a little over $20 million. We have requests from three new agencies this year that I'll talk a little bit in just a few minutes. Not new themselves, but new to funding for us. And of that, I have recommended to the board funding a total of a little over $14.5 million. It's an increase of about $154,000 from this current year's budget. Now, just a few highlights regarding our outside agency funding. As I mentioned, we have a number of agencies that requested funding. We received requests from 28 agencies, totaling almost $21 million. 25 of those are currently receiving funding. Based on my recommendation, it would increase funding to outside agencies a little over $154,000. Here you'll see with the highlights, Edgecombe County Schools, the budget does include additional appropriation of $666,000 so that the school system can increase their local supplement. You may be aware that in the state of North Carolina, all teachers are on the same pay schedule. So depending on how long you've been teaching, everybody makes the same. The difference is in each school district, they can pay a supplement, and that supplement is different from district to district. So currently in Edgecombe school system, the supplement is 7%. We have counties and school districts around us and close to us that are paying a much higher supplement. So as you would imagine, it makes it very difficult for our school system to be able to recruit and retain teachers. Our board believes in education, plus this is a critical part of that mission to get off the list. So our board decided they want to invest more money in the schools. We're providing enough funding to take that supplement from 7 to 10%. We're providing some additional funding to Carolina's Gateway Partnership. They are the organization that handles economic development and job creation and business recruitment for us, City of Rocky Mount, Town of Tarboro. We are increasing funding to Carolina's Gateway by $30,000 in an effort to help ramp up our job recruiting efforts. We're increasing funding to Edgecombe County Schools so that they can take care of some critical capital needs. Edgecombe Memorial Library, I mentioned earlier, we share funding that agency with the town of Tarboro. Both of us have agreed to include in our budget enough funds. We're splitting that to take care of a one-time appropriation for a renovation project. That will be leveraged and matched with some grant funding that the library has received. Regarding Nash County Schools, now we have students that live in Edgecombe County in the city of Rocky Mount, but they attend Nash County Schools. It's been like that for a long time. In the FY-24 budget, we are planning to decrease our funding to the school system. In operational funding, it will be a decrease of a little over $550,000. And in capital funding, it'd be a decrease of almost $180,000. This is in anticipation of our board's plan to do what's called a county line merger between Edgecombe and Nash County Schools, where the county districts won't cross the county line there in Rocky Mount, but it'll go to the county line. Students that are currently in Rocky Mount go to Nash schools will then come to our school system. This is for a much longer conversation. If you're not familiar with all of this, I would encourage you to click that link there in my presentation, and you can go to Edgecombe School System's website to read more of the background behind that. And finally, as I mentioned, we do have three agencies that would be new to funding from the county. They are United Community Ministries, STEP, which is Strategic Twin Counties Education and Partnership, and the Mercer Foundation that we are considering providing funding. What we have done is we have set aside $75,000 in our budget so that we can have further discussions with those agencies to determine if the services that they provide will align with our vision and our mission for getting off the list. So just a few notes about our capital improvements plan for FY24. The recommended budget includes $938,932 in new capital funding. And I say new because we do have some capital improvement projects that are underway this year that won't be finished, that will roll over into next year's budget. But this is accounting for new projects, new funding. You'll see it is a reduction from the original CIP budget for this current year. A couple other notes about our capital budget. As I mentioned, we do have some projects currently underway that will roll forward. We are also considering the purchase of a building for our DMV driver's license office. Here in Tarboro, there's been a DMV satellite driver's license office here for a long, long time. Their main office is in Rocky Mount, actually on the Nash County side. Because we wanted to have that service more closely available on this side of the county, for years the county has provided that space by renting a building here nearby. And it didn't work out in that building for various reasons, so that we're looking for new space in the location that we've identified, which meets their specifications. Based on our long-term financial analysis, we've determined it makes more sense for us to purchase the building instead of leasing it. We've made a recommendation to the board. They have agreed so far. So included in this budget is around $280,000 for the purchase and some renovations to a building. We also have on the table plans for a new animal shelter. Now, we don't have the construction funding budgeted for next year. We do have an additional $50,000 budgeted to cover the cost of the pre-development and planning of the new facility. That has been an ongoing project for a long time. And so we hope, within this next 12 months, we will finalize those plans, determine the cost, and we'll be able to make a recommendation to the board for constructing a new animal shelter. We've already identified the location. It will be right next to the sheriff's office on Anaconda Road. But again, we have plans for that, aside for some funding to pay for the planning of that architectural design. We don't have in this budget the cost of actual construction of that building. So more to come about animal shelter. So again, here is just a summary of how our capital improvements sort of shake out into three different categories. You'll see that of that $900,000, that of that $191,000 is for equipment. For vehicles, it's just under $300,000, and a little over $460,000 is included in buildings and grounds. Enterprise fund. So the things that we do as a county are required of us as a county, except for what's called enterprise funds. So these are services that are not required but are provided to provide a service. But as an enterprise fund, that activity is supposed to generate enough revenue to cover its costs. The two enterprise funds that we have here in Edgecombe County are utilities, water and sewer, and solid waste, our landfill. So in looking at our enterprise fund budgets for next year, we do want to note that we are looking at a possible, really now a likely water and sewer rate increase. We purchase water from two suppliers, the town of Tarboro and the city of Rocky Mount. And they have indicated that in their budget for next year includes a rate increase. So we will have to fill that. We will have to build that into our operations as well. So we will likely have a rate increase for our water and sewer rates, but you'll hear more about that in future meetings. At our landfill for what's called municipal solid waste, or really household trash mostly, we don't have a landfill for that, so we collect that at our transfer station there on on Colonial Road, and that is trucked from there to a regional landfill in Bertie County. We have to pay a fee per ton that includes the tipping fee as well as the cost to transport it there. That fee to us is going up a little over 5%. In order to build that into our operational costs, we're recommending a $6 per ton increase on our tipping fees for next year. I mentioned a moment ago that these enterprise funds are supposed to generate enough money to cover their costs. Well, currently it is not. That is not the case in solid waste. It is a very difficult thing to balance between charging enough in fees to cover our costs, but trying not to push too much onto our citizens. So we try to delicately balance that. However, we are having to put money out of our fund balance into solid waste operations to balance the budget. So you'll see at the bottom there of the screen, a revised business plan will be forthcoming. That's something that my staff and I are working on. So we're going to look at how we can make our operations more efficient to bring those costs into line. Some other budget considerations. We have a new initiative that's called Edgecombe Works. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. It's intended to, again, get off the list, address that high unemployment rate that we have. Fleet maintenance is a budget consideration. We are considering the possibility of bringing at least general maintenance of our fleet in-house. That would be a huge move for us to do that, so we are taking our time to explore that. That is not currently included in the budget. I did mention it in this presentation because I want our board to be aware of that, and I want you to be aware that we are considering that. Thirdly, building security. Unfortunately, we live in a time now where we have to be very mindful of security, especially in public buildings. So that has been a concern of mine for a long time for our staff and for our citizens that frequent our buildings. So we are having conversation with Sheriff Atkinson about the possibility of working with him to provide security in our four main buildings at least. We are analyzing the cost of that. He is looking into whether or not he can cover those bases with the staff that he has. He's very open to it, and I appreciate the work that he's done with us on that. He sees it as a concern as well, but that's not currently built into the budget, but it's something that we will continue to look at in the future. Edgecombe Works, I told you I'd come back to that. So working with Dr. Greg McLeod, Edgecombe Community College president, he and I and his staff have been working for a few months on putting together this initiative, this suite of programs, if you will, that we hope will help people find a clearer pathway to a great job, right? By providing some support along the way. The three main initiatives are Earn as You Learn. This will be for incoming and seasoned staff here at the county in select areas where they can work and go to school to gain work-related credentials. Now, this is something we are investing money in particular for our staff or potential staff to go through, but it's certainly a program that other employers may want to tap into as well. We're budgeting $25,000 for that. Secondly is what's called a Promise program. This is similar to other programs in colleges and universities where they offer scholarships to help bridge that gap, that scholarship gap that you often see. Sometimes a student may qualify for Pell Grant or student loans or scholarships, but sometimes it leaves a gap. And for some folks, for some families, just a few $100s or a couple of $1,000s might be an insurmountable barrier to them either going to school or completing school. So in working with Edgecombe Community College, we're going to invest money for a scholarship that will help fill gaps, right? So it will be for recent high school graduates and those unemployed who are interested in select programs. They can apply for these scholarships to help fill gaps. And so we're budgeting $75,000 for that. Final program under Edgecombe Works is what's called Edgecombe Works Academy. This will be where the community college can pull together or stack together, as they call it, continuing education classes into a 96-hour program, and it's called an academy. It can be done in different areas, skill areas or employment areas. We are interested in that because we believe that we can get our staff trained or even in incentivize folks to come go through the training and come work for the county, but also it'd be something that other employers may be interested in as well. And so we have budgeted $30,000 for that. So again, this is just a little bit of information about these three initiatives that we're trying to kick off. Working with Edgecombe Community College, we're grateful for them partnering with us on this, and we're looking forward to helping our citizens to find these pathways to a great job. So with all of that, we keep going back to this budget before we finalize it to, ask ourselves, does this budget adequately reflect our priorities? I presented it to the Board of Commissioners and asked them, does this adequately reflect your priorities of education and workforce, economic growth, public safety, and employee salaries? And as I present this to you, I ask, does this budget adequately reflect your priorities for Edgecombe County? And I want you to think about it. Again, I would encourage you to, listen to this, pause it where you need to. This is just a summary, it's certainly not the details. You can go to our website and click on a link there to see the details of our budget. But really, we'd like to hear from you. We encourage you to come to the public hearing that will be held on June the 5th. It will be our regular commissioners meeting. There will be a budget public hearing at that time. It will be at 7 o'clock here in the County Administration Building on the second floor in the Jonathan Felton Commissioner's Room. So thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to share with you our budget plans for next year. Again, it is my great honor to serve you as the Edgecombe County Manager, and I wish you all the best.